So good evening and welcome to the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District Family Learning Series. I'm Deborah Bookus. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning here. And tonight I have the pleasure of introducing you to Heather Haynes. And tonight she's going to be talking about mathematics and the mindset, growth mindset. And she's going to tell you a whole lot more about the growth mindset and what that is, and about some brain research to go along with it. But let me tell you a little bit about Heather. She has been our elementary mathematics specialist and coach here at Acton-Boxborough Regional School District, but she's also worked in education for 15 years. Prior to coming to Acton-Boxborough, Heather spent 10 years in the classroom working with students in kindergarten through grade 12, so teaching the whole range of mathematics. She also worked as a data coach for the nonprofit organization Boston Plan for Excellence. She was also a math specialist for the Neshoba Regional School District. Heather is also a parent. She lives here in Acton, and she has 2 elementary age students in our school district. Welcome, Heather Haynes.
Thank you. That makes me sound very exciting. So I hope I live up to all of that, right? So I hope everybody got an opportunity to take a look at your Which One Doesn't Belong, which is one of my favorite new things. Before we get started with that, I have to tell you that I've had 2 competing nightmares about this evening. One, that I get up here and I forget everything that I was going to say, so far I'm doing well on that. And the second, that I get up here and no one else was here, so thank you very much for making that nightmare not happen. And until like 2 of 7, it looked like that one might, so thank you. So Which One Doesn't Belong was created by Christopher Danielson. He's a professor of mathematics in Minnesota, and he created this free book called Building a Better Shape Book, and each page had one of these quartets of images on it, and it simply said at the bottom of the page, which one doesn't belong and why. So great for kids to start explaining why do I think that, and thinking about whether what somebody else says actually makes sense. So who would like to be a brave soul and tell us, of the dogs, which one doesn't belong?
She volunteered the back corner.
Curran would like to volunteer. Which dog doesn't belong?
All of them.
Do you want to tell us which one in particular and why you think one of them doesn't belong?
I guess the one that bothers me the most is the skewed one.
Okay, and so for everybody else, which one would the skewed one be? Bottom right dog. And so he bothers you because?
He's been fucking dragged out of shape.
Yeah, so he's been dragged out of shape. I like it. Anybody have another dog that doesn't belong? Which one do you like?
Top right.
Okay, top right. And why does he not belong?
He's a different color.
Mhm. All right. Yes.
Top left is facing in a different direction.
Uh-huh. Okay, and so our friend here doesn't feel left out, although I suppose, you know, if you make him belong, maybe he wouldn't.
The bottom left is much smaller.
Anybody have any other reasons they want to share? Thank you. So there's a website, WODBA, for Which One Doesn't Belong, .ca, because it's in Canada. And you can find ones like this one, all the way through, you know, trigonometric graphs and fractals and desserts like you have on there. So there are all sorts of different ones, and a great way to have good mathematical conversations, justifying your reasoning. So let me see if I can get the clicker to work, and then all will be well, right? Uh-oh, that's not a good noise, right? There we go. No, I think it just wasn't working before. There we go. Okay. So our agenda for this evening, we're going to talk about what is mindset, the research on the effects of mindset on the learning of mathematics, and particularly on girls. Then I'm going to share with you some really interesting, I think, new research on neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to actually change. We're going to talk about the power of mistakes and what is open mathematics. We're going to do some more math, just so you won't be disappointed. And then I'll share with you some other resources for doing open mathematics at home. Talk about how to encourage a growth mindset. We'll have maybe time for questions and probably not time to play a game, but you have the instructions in your packet for how to play the game if we don't end up having time. So how many people read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset? One. Oh, two. Okay, great. So Carol Dweck is a professor of psychology at Stanford University. She's also been a professor at Columbia and Harvard. And in 2006, she published this book of her research findings. Instead of publishing them in scholarly journals, she felt like the research was really important for a larger audience to hear about, so she published it in this book, Mindset. And so in the book, she describes two basic mindsets that people have. So a fixed mindset is if you have a belief about an intelligence or a talent or an ability about yourself, you believe that you are born with a certain level of ability or intelligence, and there's nothing you can do to change it. So, for example, you might believe that for running, you are born with a certain ability, how fast you can be, and no matter how much you practice, you're never going to be any faster. People with a growth mindset have a belief that intelligences, abilities, talents are things that you can change and grow with effort and hard work. And we don't necessarily fall into being all fixed or all growth mindsets. So you might believe that you can change your ability in terms of how well you can draw. You might believe that you can practice drawing and you can get better. But you might believe that your ability in mathematics, you were only born with a certain amount and there's nothing you can do to change that. So, you have copies of these in your folder, so you can share them at home with all your family. So why do we want to talk about mindset and what effects does it have in learning in school and in learning in all areas of our life? So people who have a growth mindset are willing to embrace challenges because they believe that if something is difficult and they're not good at it when they try it the first time, that isn't necessarily an indicator that they will never be good at it. So they're willing to try new things even though they know they might not be good at them the first time. They're also willing to persist even when things are challenging along the way because again, they know that effort is the path towards mastery. They also tend to learn from criticism because when somebody says you didn't do that very well this time, they hear this time, I didn't do that very well. And they know that if they continue to work and they take this information that this person is giving them and change it, that they can do better next time. And they also find lessons from other people's successes and they feel inspiration from other people's successes. And if we want to get better at things and to gain mastery at things, we need to try things that we're not good at the first time. And of course we have the dark side, the fixed mindset. And because people believe that, who have a fixed mindset, believe that I was born with this certain amount of talent around this thing. When they have to put in effort, they believe that means, well, I'll never be good at this, and they tend to avoid challenges. They also can't hear criticism because they feel like it's a personal statement, personal negative statement about themselves. When somebody says, you didn't do this well, they feel like, well, that somebody is actually criticizing me rather than saying I could have done this thing better. And if you have anyone at home, the slides will be online. Anyone at home who's not a Star Wars person, who's a younger person. Here's Calvin exhibiting his growth and fixed mindset. So Carol Dweck recently published an article in Education Week in September of this year, and she called it Revisiting Mindset. You all have a copy of it in your folder. It's on lovely purple paper. And so as a way to break it up so that you don't have to listen to me talk all of the time, and also so that you can read the information for yourself, we're going to do a jigsaw activity. So I'm going to ask people, this is why that 4 was so important. I'm going to ask people to work in groups of 4. And the first person in the group, whoever you designate, is going to read the first 4 paragraphs. The second person will read the second 4. The third person will read the third 4. And the last person will read the last 3 paragraphs, and there's a graphic at the end. And your job in your group in this jigsaw activity is to become your group's expert on your 4 paragraphs that you're reading. So we're going to take 4 minutes, and hopefully I'll set up a timer up there where you're going to read quietly and then think about what do I want to share with my group members about the 4 paragraphs that I read. So certainly take more time if you still need time to finish reading your section and deciding what you're going to share with your group. But if you're ready, you guys can start with the first person who read the first 4 paragraphs should share out their interesting information, and then the second 4 paragraphs, etc. So with the group. My methods for getting a group's attention when I was teaching never seem quite appropriate when I am working with adults. So I will not clap and make you repeat my clap. So I appreciate that you all came back together and didn't make me try to come up with something else. So big takeaways that people had from the article that you wanted to share with the group. Maren?
One of the big things that was a takeaway for me, which I already, I guess, know in practice, but it's still important to hear it again as a teacher, is this idea that we can preach about the growth mindset and say that we want that for our students and for our children, but a lot of times we're often sending a very mixed signal by our actions and not appropriately modeling it, and we don't even realize it.
Yep. Nice. Others? Yeah.
I think to me the conclusion of the article is very important. That it talks about how nobody is a pure growth mindset or a pure fixed mindset, but a mixture of those two.
Yep. Thank you. Any others?
I think that it gives you an alternative to great effort, great job. Because I know that that's not the best thing, that kind of shuts things down.
Right.
But I don't always think about what to say instead.
Yeah.
And she does a good job of explaining why it's important to say something different and giving you those options.
No. Thank you. Yeah.
I like the part where it said like, we should not completely avoid the fixed mindset. Maybe we have to accept the fact that we are all in fixed mindset and then move on to the growth mindset.
Yep. So that was, kind of related to Baron's part there. When you're, not accepting that part of yourself, then you're sort of sending those mixed signals. Other things? Yeah.
I really like telling truth to students,
Mm.
and then together work on it how to, if there's a need to fix it or
Yep.
direct them to where they need to go.
Right.
So I think that's huge. Because if you keep telling everyone's smart, you keep hiding those issues.
Yep.
So I think that's good.
Any others? Yeah.
I like the trigger, think that trigger moment. I think a lot of, people and the parents, always have like, some habits, right?
Yep.
You have to behavior based on, what is your experience, So at a certain point, you face something that you think about, try to be agile, flexible, then you can change the whole situation.
Yep. Thank you. Was there one over here?
I wanted to say the same thing.
Oh, you did? You had a mind meld there and you didn't even know it. Thank you all. All right. So you all did all those. So we can move to the next one. So we're going to talk specifically how this relates to the learning of mathematics, because that's my love. But as Karan and I were talking about before, really, you can substitute any other subject area in for mathematics. So the studies that I'm going to talk to you about here relate specifically to mathematics, like mathematics were involved in doing the studies for some of them, but they would certainly apply to other areas. So when Carol Dweck did her research, which was eventually published in the book Mindset, part of the study, she took a group, and her research group took a group of 5th grade students, and they gave them all a math assessment, which was a fairly easy math assessment. And the students all turned in their work, the teachers graded it, and then they split the group of 5th graders into two. Half the group, they gave back the assessment, and they said to them, "You did a good job, you must be really smart." So giving them a fixed set of praise, talking to them about an ability. The other half of the group, they gave back the assessment, and they said to them, "Did a good job, you must have worked really hard." So giving them a growth praise. Then they said to the group of kids, "Okay, we're going to give you a second assessment. You can decide which one you want to choose. One of them is going to be more challenging, but we think you're going to learn something from it. The other one is going to be about the same as the one that you just took. Which one would you like to take?" 90% of the students who were given the growth praise of "you must have worked hard" chose the more challenging assessment. And a majority of the kids who were given the fixed praise chose the easier assessment. So when we are in a fixed moment, we feel like, oh my gosh, somebody's just told me I'm smart. If I do something else to prove otherwise, then I'm no longer smart anymore. So we avoid challenging things. And so if we want our kids to challenge themselves and try new things, we have to be really careful in how we praise them. And I have to be really careful in my brain myself all the time, because I was certainly given fixed praise, and that's like what's in my head when my kids do great things. And so it's always, you just before you say it, you go, oh no, I don't want to say you're really smart. I want to say, wow, you did a great job on this. I know how much effort you put into working on this. I'm really proud of how much work you put into this. Not, you're really smart. Because then you have that next moment where you do something not quite as well, which is going to happen to all of us at some point, and you think, oh my gosh, I've just disproven the fact that I was really smart. So, oh yes, sir.
Sorry, if you don't mind to ask a question on that last one. So I'm curious, in your experience, do you come across situations where the sort of growth mindset backfires in the context of the fixed mindset? I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a child and you say, oh, this did really well, you worked hard, and they have heard grown-ups say to their friends, you're really smart.
Mm-hmm.
Do the kids ever then infer that by telling them you're working really hard that they're not smart?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I have not read any research studies about like whether kids will perceive growth mindset praise as negative when they've received fixed mindset praise before. But if I find any, I will send it to you. Yes. So if you all have read articles in The Atlantic or in the newspaper about the United States lagging behind other countries in mathematics or other areas, most likely the data from the PISA study is part of that data that they're citing about this. So the PISA assessments are given every 3 years, and they're given to 15-year-olds in about 70 countries, and about 13 million students are assessed. And the PISA assessments assess math, reading, and science. But the great thing is we've got these 13 million children who represent all sorts of different groups all over the world. And so why just assess them on their knowledge of math, science, and reading? Why not ask them some other things? So along with asking them these questions about different topics, they also ask the students to report different things about their lives. So how much electronics time do you have each week? How much time do you play outside? And they also ask them, related to mathematics here, do you think that the best way to learn mathematics, or the way that you learn mathematics, is through memorization and the learning of rules? Or do you learn mathematics through a productive way? Of course, they don't use that phrasing, where you see all the topics in mathematics like a connected web, and when you learn a new topic, you just sort of connect it to the other ideas that you already have. So students who report that they learn mathematics by memorizing are the bars on the left. And students who report that they learn mathematics by thinking of it as this interconnected web of ideas are the bars on the right. So you can see these ones on the right are achieving at higher levels than the students who are memorizers. So now we can compound that, right? So we also ask the students about fixed versus growth mindset. So obviously they're not going to ask them, do you have a fixed or a growth mindset? But they might ask them, do you think you have a certain level of mathematics ability that can never change? Or do you believe that you can work hard and through work and effort you can improve your mathematical ability? So the students who report having a fixed mindset are the blue bars, and the students who report having a growth mindset are the red bars. So you can see the lowest performing group are the students who believe that you should learn math through memorization and who have a fixed mindset. And the students who are the highest performing group are students who report learning mathematics as a web of interconnected ideas and who have a growth mindset about mathematics. So it really does have an effect on achievement as well as belief about yourself. So I love brain research because you can't argue with brain research. I mean, you know, it's right there in red and yellow. Mo Weaver and his colleagues in 2011, they really liked Carol Dweck's work. And they wanted to see if they could extend their understanding of her work now that they had an fMRI. So an fMRI is a functioning MRI. So you have somebody doing a task while they're doing a scan of their brain. So you can see what's happening inside the brain while they're doing something. So in this case, they had students doing mathematics. And so they saw that, so they're looking at response to errors. So there are two types of responses in the brain to errors that happen. So the first is the brain recognizes a problem has happened. So that's called the ERN response. That's just the brain saying, oops, there was a problem. So if you say 2 + 3 is 6, and then you see 2 + 3 is actually 5, your brain is going to react and say, oh, there was a mistake there. And there was no difference between the two groups, fixed versus growth mindset, of that recognition, the ERN, that something wrong has happened here. But then there's a second response in the brain, which is called the PE. And that's the brain sort of marshaling its attention towards the area that just made a mistake. So it's sending extra attention to the part of the brain where this mistake has actually happened. And that's where they saw a difference between students who had a fixed mindset versus students who had a growth mindset. So kids who had a growth mindset had higher levels of PE, higher marshaling of attention towards that area where the mistake had happened. And then, along with that higher activity, they then saw that those students had lower error rates after this higher activity of marshaling attention towards that area of the brain. So the brain is actually reacting differently in kids who have a fixed versus a growth mindset. So in Carol Dweck's book, she talks about the fact that high-achieving girls are the group that's most affected by a fixed mindset. And one of the possible reasons for that is that girls tend to get sort of self-regulation skills, their ability to perform in the way that we want them to in school earlier. They can sit still, they can attend to quiet tasks, in general, not always, at an earlier time. So when girls go to school, they tend to get praise about being good, being smart, because they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing in the school setting. Whereas boys gain those self-regulation skills in general a little bit later. Not all of them, but in general. And so their praise tends to be things like, if you would just try to sit still and look at this for a little while, you might understand the story. Or if you would just put a little more effort into the work that you just did here, it would look a lot better. So boys are getting this feedback that's a growth feedback. They're being told, if you put more effort into this, this positive thing will happen. Whereas girls are, in general, getting this more fixed praise because they're doing the things that we're expecting them to do. So being super careful, because we want our girls to achieve at just as high a level as our boys. There's another study by Eccles and Jacobs, which they had girls and their mothers sitting together, and the girls are doing math problems. And as soon as the mother said something to the effect of, well, I was never very good at math, the girl's performance on the math went down immediately. So don't say it. Even if you didn't like math, refrain and find ways to find things that you do love about mathematics, because there are so many fun things which are not just practicing your facts that, you know, because we heard in the article that we can send those mixed signals when we say one thing and feel another. So you do have to be careful about what you say, but try to see if you can feel a little more positively about it. And the last thing is that women are most underrepresented in fields where professors have the highest level of fixed beliefs about abilities that students need to come in with in order to be able to succeed in their field. And so researchers surveyed professors all across the United States at all sorts of American universities about, do you believe that students need to come in with a certain level of ability in order to be able to achieve in your subject area? And mathematics was one of the highest beliefs of a fixed ability needed in order to do well in it. And so if girls are most underrepresented in these fields where professors have a fixed belief, then we don't want our girls to not be able to pursue mathematics as a result of that. So we need to, as a society, sort of start to shift our beliefs. So there's a gentleman named Noah Racklin who got his EDM, which is a PhD in education, essentially, at Harvard. And he is a history teacher at Phillips Academy. And he teaches a class to students and teachers there called I Can't Do That Yet. And on the first day, he talks to the students about kids learning to walk. And we all probably remember when our children were learning to walk, and when they fell over for the 100th time, we didn't say, oh, they'll never learn to walk. We just picked them up again and let them try again. And we have to have this same belief about all of the different things that our kids are trying to do, because just like they couldn't walk the first 1,000 times they tried, they eventually got there. And just because they couldn't do the math problem the first 1,000 times they tried doesn't mean that they'll never figure it out. And so we have to accept the fact that just because you can't do it yet doesn't mean you'll never be able to do it. So there's more brain research that when you make a mistake, 2 synapses fire in your brain. When you get something right, none. No new synaptic growth when you get something right. So Carol Dweck wrote in her book, I think maybe in this article too, about the fact that when your child comes home and says, oh, I got 100% on the homework, I got all the problems right that we did in class the first time today, you should say, oh, I'm sorry you didn't have the opportunity to learn anything today. So we want our kids to struggle, not so that they're giving up, but you're not learning anything if you're not making mistakes. There's this great video called My Favorite No. It's a teaching channel video. And this teacher puts a problem up on the board every day to see, did her kids understand what they did in math class the day before? And the kids write out their answers on answer cards and they submit them, and then the teacher splits them into 2 piles. The kids who got the answer right and the kids who didn't get the answer right. And then she goes through the pile of the kids who didn't get the answer right, and she picks her favorite no, her favorite mistake. She doesn't pick a mistake that was made for sloppiness or because, somebody didn't remember a negative sign. She picks a mistake that shows some level of understanding of what happened and then some misunderstanding about what happened. And then she projects this up onto the board, and the class talks about what did this student understand, and then where was the place where there was some misunderstanding, and how can we help this student to figure out this misunderstanding. So she's talking about these mistakes in a really positive way. And it would be great if we could do that same thing. Piaget also talked a long time ago about that point of disequilibrium. That's the point where learning is happening. That point where something doesn't quite line up with the way that we thought it was, and that's where that new learning occurs. Carol Dweck has a website called Mindset Works, where she has a lot of things that schools can use around mindset, growth mindset work. And on this, she talks about the fact that not all mistakes are created equal. So that Piaget disequilibrium mistake, that's the aha mistake where you suddenly realize, oh, yeah, that wasn't quite what I thought it was. And stretch mistakes, where you're trying something that's really out of your comfort zone and you make a mistake, those are the most productive kinds of mistakes and where we have the greatest opportunity for growth. And sloppy mistakes, not taking your time, those don't have the same power for learning behind them. And she also talks about the high-stake mistake. So for example, we do not want NASA control trying anything new when they're trying to launch a satellite. We want them to do things the way that they have written it out on their list. So there are some times where it's a high-stakes situation and we don't want people trying things to see if they can learn something that time. So those are the sort of less productive types of mistakes. Oh, I fixed it last time. Let's see if I can learn something from my mistake here. Woohoo! So this is Jo Boaler. Jo Boaler is another professor at Stanford University. She's a professor of mathematics education, and she's written some great books, like What's Math Got to Do with It, which is the AB Pipstem book group book. So March 21st, if you all want to read this one, you can come and discuss it with Liz Van Cleef and I. So Jo Boaler has written this book, also a new book called Mathematical Mindsets, and she talks a lot about this growth mindset and how it affects the learning of mathematics. And she created a MOOC, a massive open online course, 4 years ago, called How to Learn Math for Teachers and Parents. And it wasn't like, how to do a calculus problem. It was this research about brain plasticity, which we're going to see here, and growth mindset, and different beliefs that we have about mathematics in general. And so the video you're going to see here is about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to actually physically change. So we're going to see if this works. It didn't earlier.
So the research conducted by Carol Dweck and her colleagues on student mindset has been really interesting and important, and there's going to be an interview with Carol later, especially for maths teachers and parents. But first, let's look at some of the recent things that have been learned about the brain. And the key finding that everyone is talking about is what is referred to as brain plasticity. So people used to think that some people had the brain for maths or other subjects and some didn't, but recently there have been stunning examples of brain growth. Now, the brain isn't actually made of plastic, but the idea of neuroplasticity refers to the lifelong capacity of the brain to change and rewire itself. In fact, there have been stunning examples of the brain's ability to create new neurons and connections in recent years. So when learning happens, a synapse fires. Electric currents fire and create new neurons and connections between neurons. And the paths of a synapse are like footprints in the sand. They can become firm paths if they're traveled a lot, or without use, they wash away. And the brain is so flexible, it's changing by the minute. It's losing and gaining connections. You may even be gaining or losing, hopefully the former, synaptic connections right now. So let me introduce you now to the life of a London cab driver. All London drivers have to learn 320 routes that help them remember and learn the 25,000 streets and 20,000 landmarks and places of interest within a 6-mile radius of Charing Cross in London. So it's extremely complex, and they have to pass a test which is called the knowledge. All black cab drivers have to have passed the knowledge. It takes between 2 and 4 years to pass the All London knowledge, and once you're licensed, you can work anywhere in the Greater London area. Here's a photo of London streets. As you can see, there's no grid structure in London. So what the researchers found is that the taxi drivers go through a training period, and by the end of their training period, the hippocampus had grown. When they retire from being a black cab driver later in life, the hippocampus shrinks back down again. They also found, they compared the brains of London taxi drivers with London bus drivers, and the London bus drivers don't have to learn such a complex set of routes, and found that the hippocampus of taxi drivers was bigger than the bus drivers. So the region of the hippocampus that had grown is specialised in acquiring and using complex spatial information in order to navigate efficiently. So a second example of brain growth was a 9-year-old girl who had half of her brain removed. She was having fits, and they literally took out one hemisphere, and at first her whole left side was paralysed. But she amazed doctors as within weeks she'd grown connections back, and eventually, in a very short time, developed all of her functions back. And that was because of the incredible and fast growth of her brain. And then the third example that was interesting, researchers at the National Institute of Mental Health found that after a 3-week intervention, 3 weeks of working differently, participants in the experiment changed the structure of their brains. So we now know that all students, maybe except those with a very specific learning disability, but all other students can achieve at the highest levels in maths in all levels of school, K right up to the end of high school. And other countries that believe this about students do a lot better than we do in the US or the UK, so countries such as Japan. So here's the irony. Children can develop half a brain or change their brain significantly, yet we think kids can't develop a few neurons they need to learn algebra.
So I should have asked you to do this before, but I forgot. So, talk to your table for a minute. How would you share this information with your children, or how does it change the way you think about your own abilities? So share at your table. So if we could come back together as a big group. They're gonna make me clap. So we have a small amount of time left, and we still have math to do. So, would anybody like to be a brave soul again and share something interesting you were thinking about related to the video? Yes.
I thought it was very interesting about the girl who had the brain removed. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that says it all.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Sharon?
Being in the literacy realm, so Heather and I work together, and I'm not yet as wise with the math as Heather is, but we actually won't finish the sentence anymore without saying yet. But from the literacy perspective, this is also shown by Dr. Shaywitz, both Dr. Shaywitz and Marian Wolf, with children who have difficulty with word learning. The earlier that we can help them to make those connections in the brain, the more successful those children will be. So just it's a whole new world with the functional MRIs, and it's just the very beginning, but it's just so interesting.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question. I know that the brain of teenagers was growing in all different directions, and the more they can be exposed to things, the more the connections might stay. If they would only do one thing, the connections would stop, get loose again, and it would be much harder. From this, it seems like even later on, you still grow and...
Yeah, so you're right. So you're right that we do go through that pairing process in our brain, right? We have all these neural connections, and then when we don't use those, they fall away. And this is, necessary for us in learning, and it happens a lot, particularly when kids are really young. But yeah, at any point in time, we can still develop those new connections. And I don't know particularly where the point happens where those connections are easier to make than others, right? Because we know that our kids, right, exactly. My kids can learn, to play an instrument. It feels like faster than I can. Anybody know that? No, okay, we'll find that one for you too, along with yours. Yeah. 7, thank you. Okay, let's see if I can get my clicker to work again. Here. Okay. Woo-hoo. So I love an fMRI. So this is a really recent research study which came out in the journal Nature has a sort of a non-profit section. And so this was in that magazine. And so it's research on students with math learning disabilities. So they did fMRIs on students who have diagnosed math learning disabilities. And they looked at the difference in activity in different areas of their brain. And so the top images are images of the brains, and the areas that you see that are orange and yellow and red, those are the areas where there's a higher level of activity for students who have math learning disabilities than students who are typically developing. So they did these fMRIs while students were doing math tasks. Then they did an 8-week intervention, 8 weeks, once a day, 5 days a week, one-on-one, with all of the students who had a math learning disability and the students who are typically developing. And they taught them things about number sense, they taught them about how operations worked, they worked on fact fluency. And then at the end of this 8-week intervention, they did the fMRI again. And you can see those are the bottom scans. And you can see there was no difference in how the brain activity was for the students who had the math learning disability versus the typically developing student after just an 8-week intervention. And they also found that when they gave them an assessment on their mathematical understanding, there was no statistically significant difference between the students who had a diagnosed math learning disability and those who are typically developing. Amazing. So, open mathematics is a way to promote a growth mindset around mathematics. And so what open mathematics means is we're asking students to do tasks where there might be different solution paths to do that. There might be different solutions to do the problem. And often it's a task where everybody can enter, and then you can take it as high as you want to take it. You can continue adding to the challenge if you need to add to the challenge. And there are lots of different ways to be mathematical. So these are listed in Joe Boaler's new book, Mathematical Mindset. So we often think about being good at mathematics as being good at calculating. But really, if we think about what mathematicians do, the calculating is a very teeny tiny part about what they do. So mathematicians and being mathematical, you need to be able to ask good questions. You need to rephrase a problem in a way that makes it understandable for others. You need to be able to explain your ideas, use logic, justify what you're doing, use different models and connect something to different ideas. And we're not all equally good at those things, but we all have certain areas of strength. And if we think about mathematics in this more open way, then it gives lots more of us ways to feel like we are good mathematicians. Because we may not be the fastest calculator in the room, but we may be really good at explaining our thinking, or really good at justifying what we did, like what we did earlier with the which one doesn't belong. So we have to think about lots of different ways of being mathematical. So we're going to do some more math. You have a salmon sheet in your folder, and it is the 4-4s task. And here's the 4-4s. You are going to use exactly 4 4s, no more, no less, plus any operations to write expressions for the numbers 1 through 20. So for example, this is not the only one, but you could write an expression for 1 as 4 divided by 4 times 4 divided by 4. Because 4 divided by 4 is 1 times another 1, you get 1. Or there are other ways to write 20. You could do 4 factorial. Factorial, for anyone who doesn't remember, just means I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to multiply it by each of the next successive smaller integers. So I'm going to do 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. 7 factorial, you wouldn't want to do, is 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. We use it when we find combinations and permutations, but you don't need to know that in order to use it for this task. So we could do 4 factorial, which would be 24, minus 4 divided by 4, again, is 1. 1 times 4 is 4, so we do 24 minus 4, we get 20. There are lots of different ways. So at your table, work together. We're going to do about 5 minutes. See how many you guys can get. A pencil? Pen or pencil? All right, so you can take this home and feel free to work on it there, but we only have 10 minutes left. So anybody want to share one of their favorites that they got? Yeah. Oh, Sharon's got 0.
I'm proud of myself.
Okay.
Okay, number 9 is 4 divided by 4.
Yep.
Plus 4 plus 4.
Does everybody agree 4 divided by 4 plus 4 plus 4 would be 9?
I got it.
Oh, you got a different one. I love it. What'd you get for 9?
It's 4 times square root of 4 plus 4 is 4.
Okay, so we got 4 times the square root of 4 plus 4 over 4. Everybody agree that's 9? Very nice. Anyone have another one other than 9? Nobody got anything but 9? Yes.
I got 8,
Yep.
which is 4 plus 4.
Yep.
Plus 4 minus 4.
Everybody agree? Yes?
Anybody get 19?
I can send you the solutions, but I'm sure you can get 19 later.
Yeah.
Or a set of solutions, I should say, because there are lots and lots of different ones. You wanted to share one? I'm ready.
Yeah. 4 plus 4.
For 19?
No, 16.
Oh, for 16. Okay.
Plus 4. Plus 4. Is 16.
Very nice. Yes, Deb?
8.
Yep.
4 plus 4 divided by 4 times 4.
Nice. And you're both using the fact that those are inverse operations. Very nice. Beautiful. So Liz and I were talking about the fact that Liz is also she's a Acton parent, and she's a math specialist in Arlington, and we both have spent a long time doing this problem. I think I spent, 25 minutes at the first sitting, and then I was telling Sharon and Jean that then you have those moments where you're not even aware that you're working on the problem, you're eating breakfast, and you're like, oh, I know how to get 13 now, and you go and you write down 13. So you'll have that moment of, oh, I know how to get 19 now, and you'll go and write it down. And for those of you who really love this, the year game is also in your folder. Every year, the Math Forum, which is a website it was out of Drexel University. It has just been purchased by, well, not purchased, but acquired by NCTM. They do the year game challenge. So you take the digits of the current year, along with the given set of operations that they give you each year. So you have different ones each year. They figure out how to get all the numbers first, and then they tell you what operations you can use. And Sharon knows, I spent 4 or 5 hours. It comes out Thanksgiving weekend. Not that I couldn't make it myself, but it comes out Thanksgiving weekend, and I spend 4 or 5 hours that weekend working on it, and then periodically throughout the rest of the year until I get them all. And I never cheat, even though you can go on the website and look up solutions. So that's another fun one. And I've done that with kids starting in 3rd grade up through high schoolers. In fact, my first year of teaching, when I was teaching in high school, that was the first year that I did the Year Game Challenge.
Can I just say something about it?
Yes.
I think one of the nice things about this, even though we're not going to go through and figure out all the different possible answers, is that even in small examples that we're giving here, we've got more answers to these than we've necessarily said. So there are other ways to make 16, and we've got 2 different ways to make 8, and another 2 to make 9. And I think that this is one of those really important things, that there's not one finite way to get to this place with this different combination of operations. So it gives access to kids on so many levels. And everybody can, I'm sorry, I don't mean to undermine your great answer, but lots of people can figure out what the road is for, right? So you can feel kind of successful there. I did.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. And yeah, we've only done this for like 2 minutes, and we've gotten, you know, two answers for this, 2 answers for this, and we could have multiple ones for 8. And so it's really nice for kids to see that there's not just one right answer here. So again, these will be up on the Teaching and Learning website, but great resources for doing sort of open mathematical tasks at home, the 4-4s task, the year game. Christopher Danielson, who started the Which One Doesn't Belong, although I think it started before him, but he was the one who popularized it, has a great website called Talking with Your Kids About Math. He has 2 kids, and he shares like mathematical conversations he has with them. You know, like his 1-year-old practicing counting the blocks and noticing when they're not keeping track with what they're saying with how they're moving the blocks, and mathematically what that means. And he has up through a 10-year-old, so there's conversations up through with a 10-year-old. Bedtime Mathematics is an app on Facebook, and it also is a website. And there, you may, if you're NPR junkies, have heard the recent story about bedtime mathematics, that they've actually showed it lowers math anxiety in parents and children. So every day there's a little story about something in the news, and then there are 3 questions. One of them's like a preschool level question. There was a story about sheep, and you know, the preschool level question might be, is 3 sheep or 5 sheep more? Then there's a sort of kindergarten, 1st grade level question, and then there's sort of end of 1st grade, 2nd grade, sometimes it moves into 3rd grade. I've had teachers in 5th grade take the little blurb and make their own question. You know, have kids make their own question about it too. The New York Times has 3 number puzzles that are free to access every day. There's the game Set. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. It's a great game. I play it, I can't remember if I played it with my 8-year-old before he was 8, but you can play it with younger kids, and you can take like smaller set of the deck through adults, and it's looking for patterns. Enrich Maths is out of the University of Cambridge in England, and they have great puzzles and tasks there. And Joe Bowler's website, ucubed.org, also has a lot of great games and puzzles. Bedtime Math has some books also. That's the way they fund their nonprofit, is selling their books. And then there's this great book that I just found that I didn't get back from one of the principals yet, called This Is Not a Maths Book, by another Brit. That's why she calls it Maths. And it's got lots of math and art connection activities. It's really nice. And of course you can play games. And games don't have to have numbers in them in order to be promoting mathematical thinking. So games like Blockus and Set and Qubits and Quirkle, all of those are looking for patterns. And that is what mathematics is looking for patterns. We just often do it with numbers, but we don't have to. So these are some great games, just a few of which have numbers, but other ones for looking at patterns. You guys read this in your article before. So there's a new website on Amazon called With Math I Can. And they have a section of the website on growth mindset. And I was going to show you this video, but we're running out of time. So you can go and explore it yourselves. And it's a video created by an organization at Stanford, an institute at Stanford. And it's a video explaining the growth mindset for like little kids. And they're going to do a series of 5. This one just came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And you know, it's very student-friendly language about what the growth mindset is. Jo Boaler also created, based on the popularity of her How to Learn Math for Teachers and Parents, she created How to Learn Math for Students. And it's a series of 6 videos and questions which are in kid-friendly language, talking about a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, and it's free. So you can go to the UCubed website, or there's that funky URL, or you can search for How to Learn Math for Students. And as I mentioned before, Liz and I are going to be facilitating the AB Pip STEM book group on March 21st. We wanted to do it on Pi Day, but it didn't happen. Reading What's Math Got to Do with It, which has got a lot of the stuff we've talked about tonight, as well as other interesting ideas about mathematics. And we'd love it if you all would come and join us. And they do want you to pre-register, but it's free to come. Questions? And thank you. Yes?
I have a question. Russian school mathematics. What's your opinion on that?
So I have not had my children go there. I haven't gone there myself, so I don't feel like I am an informed citizen to be able to tell you about it. I would love to go sometime and sort of experience what it is to be able to tell you that, but I really can't say whether I think it's good or bad. I think that for me, the thing that I want kids to know is that math is not about being the fastest. Math is not all about calculation. Math is about patterns, and there's lots of different ways to be good at mathematics. So if Russian School of Math is promoting those things, then great. Other things? Yeah.
I just like to say on that subject, there was actually an article in the most recent Atlantic about math education, and in particular, more sophisticated math education. They talk a lot about the Russian School of Math and their founding philosophy about using math as a tool to interpret and understand the world, not just drill and kill.
Do you have kids who go there?
I do.
Thank you.
And actually, I hate it. Well, it's kind of actually a serious issue in my family that we're trying to figure out what to do. But my older one is kind of girl, very kind of self-aware and self-conscious about what other people think. And I think that she's at this school with a lot of kids who are perhaps more interested in math and maybe better at it, or she perceives that they are better at it than she is. And I think it makes her feel very insecure. So we sent her there hoping that she would learn to love and appreciate that. I'm a little worried that it's having the opposite.
Yeah. Well, maybe some 4-4s or the year game or a little blockus would do the trick.
Or the Jo Boaler course.
Yes.
It's really, if it makes any difference, 40,000 people signed up for the course in first country offering,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal.
And like
That was
several
parents
100,000
and
now
teachers.
have taken it. Yeah.
And it's a fantastic course for kids. So, and one of the things that Jo does is she shows his videos throughout, short clips. They're a little different than what we saw, but really give some information about brain plasticity and some history of people who are mathematicians who, in fact, were thought to be very slow when they were in school, but
she was considering here to working groups where discussing what we all from different, we all grew up in different countries,
Yeah.
different parts of the world. And what we all feel, and maybe it's the same for the people who grew up here, is that the way math is taught now is very different from the way we got it. And what we feel is that we're missing a little bit of the drill on the basics. So there's a lot about the different ways on how you can get to things. But I mean, coming from the different backgrounds, we feel like some basics are not really taught as well as we are really used to. Is there any?
So I guess if you're talking about like, so you mentioned drilling. So to me that brings up math facts, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, you know, we want part of the math frameworks is that we want students to have fluency with their facts. But I was sharing with some teachers. I studied mathematics. I majored in math when I went to college. And there are still some math facts that I derive, like 7 times 8. I still say to myself, 7 times 7, 49 plus 7 more. But you wouldn't know that because I can do it so quickly that I look like I've memorized it. And so there are some of them that I have, most of them, I've internalized over my lifetime because, you know, I use them all the time, right? But not having 7 times 8 memorized, I don't think has really hindered me in my life. And so we want kids to have that fluency, that ability that I have to be able to figure out 7 times 8 when I don't have it memorized in a quick, efficient way, like I just did there. I know some fact and I know something about operations to figure it out. And we want them to be able to do it so that they can do other mathematics without having it be challenging for them. But we want them to do it in a web of understanding, like we were talking about with the PISA study before. When students are learning mathematics by only thinking about it as memorizing, they're not achieving as high level as kids are when they're having that math as a web of understanding. I may not have convinced you today, but tomorrow maybe.
I think you get there as well, but I was just volunteering at a basketball tournament here in Acton. And so people came and bought different snacks, and then we had a 6th grader who was there. She took out her phone to calculate on how much you need to pay because they just can't do it anymore.
Yep, but I think that having that fluency around calculation allows you to be able to do those things without taking out your phone, right? And I'm often surprised in the store when somebody has to take out their phone to figure out 25% of something. And that says to me they don't have an understanding of 25% is a quarter.
Exactly.
You can just divide by 4 and then you'll know what 25% is. And so that's part of having that fluency, part of understanding how numbers work. Other things? Thank you all. I know we're past time and I really appreciate you not making my nightmare happen.